Why are Mom's bones here? My 4-year-old niece, who was left in our care after my sister went missing. As soon as Sage came to the house, she pointed to the garden and said, "What? Could it be that my sister is here?" She possessed a mysterious power, and having witnessed it multiple times, I felt the blood drain from my face. As my niece had suggested, I started digging in the direction she pointed, and from there, one after another, I found my sister's belongings. What the hell is this all about? When I found something there and discovered the truth, I couldn't stop shaking with fear and anger. I married my husband Gabriel, who is 5 years older than me, 2 years ago. We were colleagues working for the same internet company. He was my mentor, and I admired Gabriel, who worked so hard and was rumored to be on the fast track to success. When I first introduced him to my parents after we got married, he was very surprised. This was because my father was the president of the company where we worked. My father also knew Gabriel, who was very good at his job, and he was happy to approve of him. We got married in a way that was blessed by everyone around us, and I was full of happiness. I resigned from my job through early retirement and became a full-time housewife to support my husband. I'll work harder too, so you should support me too, Victoria. He declared this to me, and I spent every day working as hard as I could. Perhaps because of this, my father, who is also the president of the company, recognized Gabriel and publicly announced within the company that from now on he would nurture Gabriel as a candidate for the next president. Perhaps because of this, my husband gradually started coming home late. And from one point on, I had the feeling that his attitude was somehow different from before. "Did you take this Saturday off properly?" "What? Why? What's wrong?" "I told you we were invited to a friend's wedding as a couple." "What? Was I right?" No matter what I said to him, he seemed to be somewhat absent-minded, and I wondered whether he was listening to me or not. Sometimes they were tense, sometimes not. "How's your work going? Is it as hard as ever?" "Oh, you're so annoying all the time." "It's none of your business." He suddenly raised his voice and threw a box of tissues at the wall, which hit me by mistake. Ouch! However, Gabriel just glanced at it sideways, without apologizing, and left the room. He wasn't the kind of person who would do something like this. Maybe he's under pressure from work. But it is true that when it comes to the next successor of a company, unlike ordinary employees up to now, the amount of work he has to do must be extraordinary. I thought that my husband must be going through a difficult time, so I decided to wait and see what would happen. Then, I suddenly received a call from my parents saying that they had given me some good wine and meat, and that they were going to bring them over now. I thought it would only be my mother who would come, but on this day my father also came with me. "Ha! Gabriel hasn't come home yet." "Yes, it looks like he's working late again today." "Dad, please don't push him too hard, okay?" I made a light-hearted request to my father, laughing jokingly as I did so. "I'm not doing that. Especially now that there's no big case, everyone seems to be going home on time." "Oh, really?" I was confused by my father's words, as I had assumed that he was coming home late because of the hard work he had to do. However, seeing the two of them peering at me with curious looks, I didn't want to cause any worry. Ah, yes. I forgot that Gabriel recently started going to the gym, saying he was going to work out. Laughing, I hurriedly managed to cover up the situation. Is he possibly having an affair or something? Behind the smile, I turned to my parents. My anxiety and my suspicions about him grew. That evening, I decided to check up on my husband, and while he was in the bath, I decided to look at both my phone and the company phone. There are no particular logs on them, and there is nothing suspicious about looking inside. Maybe it's just my imagination. But just in case. I thought so, but was still worried, so I set up the GPS app that was originally on my company phone so that I could check it on my phone as well. Then, the next day, I decided to talk to my sister Emma, who is 5 years older than me and came to visit us. She has a 4-year-old daughter called Sage, and although her house is an hour's drive away, she used to bring Sage to visit me on her days off work. My sister and I had been in a good relationship since we were little, and we talked about anything, and every time I had something to say I always asked her for her opinion and used it as a reference. You know, actually, I think my husband might be having an affair. Gabriel. It doesn't seem like he's the only one who would do something like that. When she said that, I somehow really felt like that. But well, if he's cheating on you, you should thoroughly punish him. I'll help you. My sister encouraged me with a laugh in a light-hearted tone. She always cheered me up, and Gabriel and I both adored her and relied on her. Emma remained someone who, even after getting married and becoming a mother, could still openly express her likes and dislikes. One particularly distinctive aspect about her was her clothing. She had a liking for punk-style attire, often wearing rugged leather jackets and accessories featuring skull motifs, to the extent that she would wear them to the nursery school's parent meetings without hesitation. Despite saying, "I might stand out," my sister remained steadfast in her stance without changing herself. I admired her consistency. Sage also proudly boasted to her friends, "Isn't my mom cool?" When the topic of Gabriel's alleged affair ended, my sister, unusually, opened her mouth with a serious look on her face. Come to think of it, lately, on my way home from work, I feel like someone is following me. Does your husband know? Shouldn't you talk to the police about that? But well, no one would attack such a flamboyant, strong-looking woman. Emma soon returned to her usual mood and laughed it off, but I was still worried. About 2 months had passed since I had such a talk with my sister. I had noticed that she used to bring her kids to visit me every holiday, but that had stopped. I haven't seen you recently. How are you? Are you busy? Things have been going on. I'll come visit you when things settle down again. When I texted her, she would get back to me right away, but I had a feeling that she was not quite as clear-cut and different as usual. Let's visit my sister's house next Sunday. That's what I thought, on a Friday night. I was reading in the living room when I heard a clattering noise coming from the garden. My husband hadn't come home yet and, feeling uneasy, I decided to look through the gap in the curtains. When I peeked in fearfully, I saw Gabriel digging up the soil with a shovel. I was relieved to see that it was my husband, but at the same time I wondered why he was in the garden when I got home and had not even entered the house. "You? What are you doing there?" "Oh no, I was thinking of planting some flowers here. At this late hour of the night. Then I'll do it in the daytime." "You don't have to. Anyway, don't touch this place," he shouted at me in a terrible tone of voice. "Don't talk like that." "Oh, I'm sorry. But I really just want to do it, it's okay." He filled the hole he had dug with a panicked look and went straight into his room. I wonder if he is so stressed out that he wants to tinker in the garden. I thought Gabriel must have been very preoccupied, so I didn't mention it anymore, but I felt it was somewhat eerie. Then the next morning, I received a phone call from my sister's husband, Richie. He had rarely contacted me directly before, so I thought something had happened to my sister, and I rushed to answer the phone. Then he told me Emma didn't come back without contacting me. I tried calling her many times, but I couldn't connect to her. I heard his voice impatiently. I immediately tried calling my sister too, but the call immediately switched to an answering machine. When I told Gabriel about it, he said that he and Richie would try to find a place where she might go. Therefore, my niece Sage is in my care and I have to take care of her. What should we do for fun? How about going for a walk? I tried my best not to make Sage feel anxious, but I was cheerful and treated her as usual. Then my niece looked at the garden and pointed. "Why are Mom's bones here?" "Ha! What does that mean?" Her sudden words confused me, but I also felt that this was what she was talking about. In fact, Sage had a kind of mysterious power. My sister and her husband found out about her power when she was about 2 years old, and they told me about it. For example, on the way home from playing in the park, she would tell me about an upcoming car accident nearby, or tell me the location of something I had lost. In fact, even in front of me, she told me in one shot the location of an earring that I had looked everywhere but could not find. I thought this was real, but my sister and her husband and I were the only ones who knew about this, as we didn't want it to be misused by bad people. Because of this, I trusted my niece and dug the one she was pointing at. "This is Mom's bone." I knew it. But why? Sage held it in her hand as it came out of the earth, and finally she started to cry. In addition to that, I also found my sister's personal belongings in a bag and a letter addressed to me with a postage stamp on it. How could it be here? No way. I thought first of my husband, who had just dug in the garden the night before. Thinking that there might be a clue in this letter, I decided to open the seal. I found that it was written about Gabriel, and the contents were unbelievable. When I found out the truth, I was terrified and angry at the same time, and I couldn't stop shaking. And I knew that first of all I had to find my sister at any cost and make sure he was punished. To do this, I had to find out about my husband. So I remembered something and decided to look into it first. Furthermore, I told everything to the person who would be important in sanctioning him this time and asked for his cooperation. That evening, my niece was left at my parents' house and I was at home waiting for my husband to return. Gabriel had sent me a text message about half an hour before, saying, "Emma hasn't been found yet, so I'm going home once." A little while later, my husband came home. "Wow! What is this?" he shouted as soon as he entered the living room, looking at the tabletop. Yes, I had arranged the things I had dug out of the soil in the room to see Gabriel's reaction. "Hey, why is there so much dirt on it? Why is all that junk here in the first place?" He pretended not to know anything and would ask me, but it was clear he was upset, his eyes scurrying and swimming. "This belonged to your sister and was buried in the garden of this house. It was you who did that, wasn't it? Hey, where is your sister? What proof do you have to say that? There's no way I know where Emma is. What are you talking about? You were messing around in the dirt yesterday. It's obvious that you're involved in this, isn't it? What happened in the garden happened yesterday, today, and besides, I was watching you, so did he think he could get away with it?" As expected, he shut up, as if he thought there was no excuse. "Well, okay. Just read this and you'll know everything." So I confronted Gabriel with my sister's letter that was buried with him. "A letter? It's the letter your sister was trying to get out from me. This also came out of the ground. There shouldn't have been anything like that." My husband blurted out. He was probably unaware of the letter's existence. It was tucked between the books, so maybe he didn't check that far. And there it said, "If I suddenly disappear, please suspect Gabriel." I read it in front of my husband and glared at him. "Hey, what does this mean? Does it mean you're sure you had something to do with your sister's disappearance this time?" "I don't know anything about that." "Emma, what are you talking crazy about too?" My husband denied it, but seemed quite impatient and sweat was dripping from his forehead. "There's more to this. I was persistently followed by Gabriel," she said. "Oh, no. You were doing something terrible, weren't you? Explain to me what's going on." I decided to question him with a strong attitude. And my husband held his head and looked like he was thinking about something. "No, I didn't." "What? What?" "It wasn't forced. She wanted me." "Ha!" Gabriel lost his escape route and started saying incomprehensible things, but it seems that he had secretly been in favor of my sister since the beginning of our marriage. "I also put up with it because I married you in the first place. But Emma and I get on well together, don't we? We talk a lot. We're even the same age." As he spoke, he had the enraptured expression of a maiden in love. "I don't think she meant to talk to you like that. But you know, after all, just having a nice conversation isn't enough, is it?" I began to want to know more about her. I think Gabriel didn't even hear my voice. He continued to talk and talk and talk. My husband, who wanted to somehow develop his relationship with my sister, started following her home from work and ambushing her. "Maybe you weren't busy at work, you were just running late because you were visiting my sister." "Oh, yes. Well, I don't really need to work overtime, considering how good I am at my job." He told me the most outrageous things in a casual manner, without seeming to take offense. My sister had once said that someone might be following her, and it wasn't her imagination, but my husband was doing it. Maybe it was also the way he was tense and over the top about what I was saying. In a way that seemed like checking answers, I questioned Gabriel. Yes, it was because I was thinking about Emma. But I'm so annoyed that you're talking to me from the side. That's terrible. So, why did you, about my sister? I hesitantly asked a convincing question, but my husband seemed unconcerned and began to speak without denial. Emma found out I was following you, so I decided to send you to the other side. That's terrible. Because she's going to tell you and the boss about it. That would be terrible, wouldn't it? Gabriel sat back in his chair, chuckling disdainfully. It seemed like if either I or our father, who was also the company president, were to confront him, divorce would be unavoidable, and he might even lose his position as the next successor. Are you so concerned about your position, yet you're putting aside your own actions? Well, you know, not just anyone can become the next president. It would be a waste to trip over something like this. And because of that, my sister. Well, I miscalculated when you dug up the garden and found Emma's belongings. My husband looked at me with a slightly regretful expression on his face and stared at me. Sage told me. She said there are Mama's bones here. She's a creepy little kid. Well, but now that I know everything about you, I can get rid of you too. Saying that, Gabriel suddenly stood up vigorously and held my neck with both hands. Stop it. At that moment, the door next to the living room suddenly swung open with force. Stop it. Boss. Why are you here? At that moment his hand loosened and I took the opportunity to leave it and ran to my father's side. In fact, I had told my father about everything that had happened and asked him to be present at this time. I asked my father to hide because I knew that if my father was there, my husband would not tell him anything. Let me first say this from a father's point of view. You have hurt my precious daughters and I will never forgive you. I will report you to the police. I am sorry, sir. I'm sorry. Gabriel prostrated himself on the floor and apologized repeatedly to his father. This is termination from the position of president. And of course, there's no talk about you being the next president. I had hopes for Gabriel, but this is truly disappointing. Oh, no. Please don't do that. He looked up, stood up, and literally sulked at his father. There's no way I can forgive you. I pushed Gabriel away and showed my rejection with my whole body, and he now rubbed up against me. Please, ask Dad to do something, too. If there's no successor for the company, it'll be over, right? Everyone will be in trouble, won't they? Ending it would be better for the employees than having someone as despicable as you inherit it. I cut off Gabriel, who was begging for mercy, without hesitation. Despite my struggling husband's efforts to somehow resolve the situation, he began earnestly bowing down in apology. My father and I looked at each other and sighed. It was then that I received a call on my phone from my sister's husband, Richie. When I answered the phone, what I heard was my sister's voice. "Victoria, I'm okay." To my surprise, Emma was alive. Thank God, I'm so glad. I was so relieved that I crouched down on the spot. "I'm so sorry for worrying you. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, because they said they would hurt you too if I told you." "It's okay. Thanks to Sage for telling me. That child is also waiting for Mom to come home." As it turned out, what my niece referred to as Mom's bones were actually accessories featuring the skull motifs that my sister loved so much. When I saw this, I also imagined the worst. But Sage believed that Mom would be okay, that she was alive, and I was determined to believe the same. I hung up the phone, got up and looked down at Gabriel, who was also looking at me curiously. "How the hell did you know where I was?" "I locked her up where you would never find out." "Did you forget that there's a GPS app in the smartphones of all employees provided by the company?" "Ah. When I suspected you of cheating on me once before, I set it up so I could see it on my phone too. From there I was checking his activity history on the day my sister disappeared. I then found out that she was in a warehouse that was a long way from home and that seemed to be in use now. I told that to Richie and had her head there. It's good that you didn't harm your sister. It's a relief that you didn't compound the guilt." As I deliberately delivered the sarcastic remark, my husband, in a countermove, began to smirk at me with a challenging gaze. "Well, you know, we finally got some alone time, right? It would be a waste to get rid of it so quickly. But you wouldn't understand this feeling, would you?" Seeing his eerie expression as he spoke this, I was terrified to the point of goosebumps. "I'm sure Emma was happy to be with me too. You're the worst. You scumbag." I couldn't find any more words to say to Gabriel, who kept repeating impossible statements. "The police have already been notified and they are going to file a damage report." "Wait a minute. You don't mind if I get caught, do you? Let's all continue to get along from now on. We're a family, aren't we? You're the one who caused this whole mess, and yet you have the nerve to say such things. What's wrong with you? It's over between us." I said this and held out the divorce papers I had kept in a drawer in front of him. When Gabriel saw this, he let loose and just mumbled, "Oh no." Afterward, my husband was taken away by the police for imprisoning my sister, facing charges for his actions. My sister, suffering from emotional distress, demanded a compensation of 3 million yen from Gabriel. I divorced him, of course, and in addition, my husband, who was also dismissed from his company, lost everything. The sister was fortunately uninjured and in good health, and Sage was happy to see her mother again. Meanwhile, Sage had to return to work at her father's company. I have a goal to take